3, hit it!
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's Caffeine for the Soul. And today's episode is based on something that I've seen quite recently and haven't actually talked about much yet. So it may come out a little more rambly than usual, but if it does, bear with, because I think if you can get a feel for what I'm pointing to, it's going to be very worth your while. Most of you know who listen to the show, I love playing golf. I'm not a great golfer, but I love playing golf. And recently I was playing in a competitive match, and it came down to about an 8-foot putt on the 18th hole. And it is kind of exciting, you know. And normally my approach to golf is, I don't know, and I kind of almost pretend I'm not there and hit the ball and hope something good happens. But as I was standing over that putt, I had a really unusual for me experience. I looked at it and I thought, oh, I can make this. Now, it wasn't positive thinking. I wasn't trying to convince myself I could make it. I just looked and I kind of knew, oh, I could make this. I didn't know I would, but I knew I could. And I felt so different in me when I made the shot. And in fact, it did go in and I won the match. Go me. But what stuck with me was that feeling of, oh, I can. And I started to notice all these places where it wasn't there. That feeling of I can wasn't present. Now, I was still able to do things, right? There's many, many things I can do. I'm sure there's many, many things you can do, and you're not necessarily sitting there affirming that you can when you do them. But the feeling of I can was so clear. And I started to notice, oh, that's the feeling I have when I sit down to record a podcast. That's the feeling I have when I sit down to write a book. That's the feeling I have when I stand up in front of an audience and speak. It's not something I consciously think about, but that feeling of I can is there. And then, of course, I started to notice, well, where isn't that feeling there? And I noticed that there's lots of places in my life where it's not that I actively think, oh, you can't do this, what are you thinking? But I'm also not in that I can feeling. And I want you to just try that on for yourself. I want you to think about something that you know you can do. And just notice, what's that feeling of knowing you can? And then I want you to consider something that you're not sure you can do. You think maybe you can do, and see what the contrast is between the two feelings. And just as an experiment, I'm not telling you to make yourself believe it, but just as an experiment, see if you can find that same I can feeling with the thing that you weren't sure about. You know what? I think I can do this. I wonder if I can do this. I probably can do this. And what I've been finding is that a whole bunch of quotes that have been floating around in my world for over 30 years since I first started teaching back in 1990, suddenly I have a completely different feel for them. And there's two in particular that jumped out. One, in the very first training I ever did, I'd fallen in love with a quote from Henry Ford. Whether you think I can or you think I can't, you're probably right. And I remember thinking it was really clever and cute. But when I started to see, more to the point, when I started to feel what I can feels like in me, that quote became really meaningful for the first time. Whether you think I can and all the feeling and clarity that comes with that, whether you think I can't and all the confusion and doubt, and it starts becoming about you instead of the task, and it goes off and off and off and on and on and on in your head. It's such a different state of mind to approach things from. And it just turns out that the I can state of mind works better. It brings more of you to the table. It lets more thinking fall off your mind, so you have more bandwidth. You're more available to the present moment. You're more available to the task at hand. You're more available to inspired thoughts arising from out of the blue. And and coming to mind and causing you to notice things you've never noticed before, which allows you to do things you've never done before, which allows you to create things and achieve things you've never created or achieved before. And it starts with a feeling. And that feeling is, I can. Another quote I used to think was a little silly because it sounded very positive thinking-y and oh yes, I'll just tell myself this, and I don't believe it, but I'm going to tell myself this. And it's a Theodore Roosevelt quote: "Believe you can, and you're halfway there." But suddenly that quote's become meaningful to me. Because when I kind of know I can, I am halfway there. Now, it might take me a bunch of work. It might take some serious trial and error. It might take more time than I want it to take. But there is no task that is worthy of your time and attention which you will not do better from a starting place of, I can, or I think I can. Remember that story? The little engine that could? And the little engine was like trying to pull the train up the tracks, and it got to the big hill, and it was like, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. And he's getting towards the top. I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. And he gets over the top and he says, I knew I could, I knew I could, I knew. Well, again, I learned that as a children's story. But for the first time I saw, actually, there's a point to that story. And there's a truth to that story that, for me at least, got lost in how kind of hokey and silly it sounded. So there's my invitation for you this week, is play with I can, just as a game. Take anything that you're up to in your work, anything that you're up to in your personal life, and just notice the feeling, not the words, but notice if you can find that feeling of, I can. I know I can. Because there's lots of things you know you can do, so you know the feeling of I can. And it just turns out that feeling is portable. Now, if you'd like to be able to share the kinds of things that I talk about each week in these podcasts with others and have more of an impact in the world, regardless of what you do, whether it's impact as a leader or as a teacher or as a professional, as a coach or as a doctor or as a therapist, I encourage you to join our Impact Academy, which you can learn more about at michaelneill.org/Impact Academy. And it's the space that I've created online to take over 30 years of working with others and teaching and training people in the art and science of impact. And we kind of put it together. We get together a few times a month. We do online trainings every year. I do a live session with a client that you get to watch and sit in on. And so there's just a lot of opportunities to both learn new skills, but also to kind of support yourself in your ongoing quest to be more impactful in whatever work that you do. Until we next speak, have fun, learn heaps, and happy exploring. I'll talk with you soon.